So if you know me, you know that my favorite game of all time, bar none, is Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. Now, Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door is a game that released back in 2004 on the GameCube, and it was the first Mario RPG that I ever completed, and I absolutely adored it. I fell in love with this game. The characters, just such a rich, diverse cast of original characters that all had their own unique designs and personalities and backstories that really felt realistic and believable in their motivations, their aspirations. And then on top of that, you also just had really, really good combat system. It was a turn-based RPG with really fun, really fleshed out mechanics, and it was all wrapped together in this really, really good overarching story. The game was divided into 8 chapters, and each chapter had a different setting with its own, set of characters and location. This one might be this is kind of your typical grassy area, but it's got a castle, and it feels very traditional in that sense. But then another one might be you're on a train, and it's sort of a murder mystery sort of thing going on, kind of a parody of Murder on the Orient Express, I think is the name of the classic whodunit novel. Then one chapter, Mario becomes the Great Gonzalez. Is kind of his alter ego, and he is a wrestler. You have to sign up to be in this arena where basically, essentially, Mario becomes a pro wrestler. But there's all these like seedy things going on in the background. You're having to piece together who the bad guy is, because like there's some fighters that are mysteriously disappearing, and so there's kind of like some corruption going on in the organization. And there's some red herrings along the way, but you've got to try to piece together who's the villain here. But really, really cool and unique, original stuff. And even in the first chapter of the game, which is that grassland area I was talking about with the castle, that castle is guarded by this mysterious, gigantic, very intimidating looking dragon named Hooktail, who has been eating all of the citizens of this nearby town. And this Koopa village. It used to be this very popular tourist attraction, but now nobody's coming there anymore because people are scared, and the people who live there are all just kind of like staying at home, because they don't want to be next to be victimized by this giant evil dragon. So yeah, just a very different sort of a game from any other Mario game out there. And that's what made Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, and frankly just Mario RPGs in general, so special. And again, you just had this whole overarching plot that just tied everything together so beautifully. Even though you had these individual chapters with their own specific story beats, a character from Chapter 1 might show back up again in Chapter 5, and like you could revisit these characters later on and see how they have developed, how their own personal little life has advanced. And it's really cool to see that growth, and just how everything just kind of ties back in together. There's lots of plot twists along the way. In the game, it's got some, very lighthearted, humorous moments, but it's also got some pretty dark stuff that you wouldn't expect from a Mario game, like demonic possession, for example. At the hub area of the game, when you start the game, you're in this town called Rogueport, and you're immediately greeted by this noose that's just hanging in town. There's like this gallows, because it's kind of this sort of medieval sort of a town that you're in. Where I guess they used to hang people. I don't know. The implications are pretty dark. But it's such a good game that just does so much right that I want to see more of in the Mario series, and it has in other Mario RPG games. So, after I played and beat Thousand Year Door as a kid, probably the next one that I played, next Paper Mario game anyway, was Super Paper Mario, which came out on the Wii in 2007. And that game opted for a different a different sort of gameplay loop. So they kind of decided we don't really want this to be a turn-based RPG anymore, and instead they made it um, a puzzle platformer that's primarily a 2D platformer, but it's kind of interesting the way they merged sort of the 2D and 3D mechanics. So Mario gets this ability early on where he can essentially flip between the two dimensions, like from 2D to 3D. And so with that, they're able to create some really clever and unique puzzles with interesting solutions. Just the way that they play with kind of your, with optical illusions and stuff like that. It was a really interesting take, and this was probably the most divisive Paper Mario game because they abandoned that traditional, turn-based battle mechanics. But personally, I still really enjoyed it. I loved it because it still had that heart and soul that Thousand Year Door had, with just a really, really great cast of unique original characters and a really beautiful overarching story. Super Paper Mario is one of the first games and one of the only games really that's ever made me tear up. Like, it's a very emotional game. So, not everybody loves it, but I really appreciate it, and I really consider that to be the closure of just a masterful, fantastic trilogy of Paper Mario games. So yeah, after Super, then I played the original Paper Mario on the N64. That was the first one. And technically that was the first Paper Mario game I ever played, was the N64 original, which came out in 2000, I believe. But that was like, I was a kid. I was like maybe 5 years old, and I can remember we rented it at like a game rental store. So I didn't actually own it. And as a 5-year-old kid who never really, at that age, you can hardly conceptualize the concept of an RPG. And even though, with Mario games, Nintendo tries to simplify things to make them as accessible as possible, still, there's a lot of reading, a lot of dialogue, and a lot of stuff that it's like you're not really going to be able to fully grasp as a 5-year-old kid. So I didn't really know what I was doing. I don't think I ever really got past like the prologue area, but I was so enamored by it because it really just expanded the possibilities of what the Mario universe could be. Because up to that point, from every other Mario game I had played, I was accustomed to seeing the Goombas are the bad guys, the Koopas are the bad guys. These are all Bowser's henchmen, and they're evil, and you need to stomp on everyone that you see. But this game introduced me to the idea that, like, well, actually, no, there's some good ones. There's this whole community of just peace-loving Goombas. There's a whole family of them who are all just kind of chilling. And when Mario gets hurt at the start of the game, they take him in and nurse him back to health. And one of them joins you on your quest to rescue Princess Peach. And likewise, then you go to a Koopa village and you find a bunch of nice Koopas. So yeah, the original 3 Paper Mario games hold such a special place in my heart. And of course, the first one, it was a traditional turn-based RPG like Thousand Year Door. They hadn't fully refined all of the battle mechanics yet. It was still a really, really good, competent RPG. But the sequel definitely improved upon some of the systems. So, like, for example, you could switch turns and put your partner out in front of you and let your second party member attack first and then Mario, so you could kind of strategize that way. And then, like, your partner had their own, health meter, like, which wasn't really a thing. In the first Paper Mario game, your partner kind of felt like an extension of Mario in a way, if that makes sense. Whereas with Thousand Year Door, they really kind of made it where, no, these are 2 separate characters in battle, and you can strategize how you use them to kind of help one another, so your partners can, use offensive attacks and things like that, or they can play defensively and help, like, shield Mario or shield themselves, or beef up Mario's stats to where he can deal extra, attack power and stuff like that. But they really kind of like fleshed it out and gave the partners a more prominent role in the sequel and everything. But still, though, the original Paper Mario was just so good. And then, so after the original trilogy, then the series went through, I don't really want to say a hiatus because Nintendo was still consistently working on the games, but we went through, at least at that time, what was the longest gap, and I kind of think to this day is still the longest gap between Paper Mario games. So it was 2007 when Super Paper Mario came out, and then it wouldn't be until 2012, which was like 5 years later, before we would get the next Paper Mario game, which was Paper Mario Sticker Star on 3DS. And I said earlier that Super Paper Mario is probably the most divisive Paper Mario game. That's because it had some mixed reception. There's a lot of people like myself that really, really love that game. And then there's some people out there, a decent number of people who don't like the game or thought it was just kind of average, or in some cases, just downright dislike the game because they feel like that was the turning point of Paper Mario, losing sight of what it was originally meant to be and just becoming something else entirely. Um, but the reason I don't say that Sticker Star is the most divisive Paper Mario game is because there's really not a whole lot of division. Most people unanimously agree that this game sucked, right? Like, to be divisive, there has to be a divide, and there's really not much of a divide. It's just, you know, Super Paper Mario might have had, mixed reception, but this game's reception was not mixed. It was just bad. um, so this game came out, and the reason it was so hated, this point forward marked a turning point for Paper Mario, where it was just such a radical departure from everything that came before. And if you've never played a Paper Mario game, from an outsider's perspective, it might be kind of hard to understand, like, why are people making such a big deal out of it. I think the best thing I could probably compare it to would be kind of like the jump from the OG Teen Titans series, like the beloved, DC animated Cartoon Network show from like 2003 or 4 to, I don't know, like 2007, something like that, where you had Robin and Starfire and Beast Boy, Cyborg, Raven, just this whole cast of interesting characters, and seeing their dynamic and, just how that would develop over time as these characters grow and change. You had a stellar cast of villains. You had Slade, you had Brother Blood, I think his name was. You had Trigon, Raven's father, who's basically Satan, I guess. Then season 5, you had like the brain guy. I wasn't as crazy about season 5, to be honest, but it was a really, really solid show. Really well choreographed action sequences. The humor was really good. Just very well animated. It looked really great. The character designs were really, really solid. It was just a fantastic show. And it kind of ended on a cliffhanger that left a lot of people really wanting more. And then come like 2013, I think it was, I guess you could say, rebooted the franchise or came out with this spin-off called Teen Titans Go, which, as far as I know, is still getting new episodes to this day. And, is very hated by a lot of people. There's some people who really like Teen Titans Go, but a lot of people just do not like it. It's a show that just does not take itself seriously at all. It's got a much more kind of a chibi sort of a art style. The characters are shorter and stubbier. In some ways, it almost feels like a Teen Titans Babies or something. How like all these shows had like baby spin-offs back in the day or whatever. And the color palette, in my opinion anyways, it's too overly like saturated, like a lot of bright kind of neon colors that sort of hurt my eyes. A lot of Cartoon Network shows had this, in my opinion, very unappealing color palette at that time, with stuff like Clarence, and then like this one show that did not last long at all is probably the most egregious example, the Problem Solvers. I think the same team behind that went on to make like Uncle Grandpa, who you might be a little bit more familiar with, which was another show I didn't really care for. But yeah, you'd have just like a lot of fart jokes. The original Teen Titans tried to appeal to more of a, I guess more of a sort of an adolescent audience, or like a preteen audience. Whereas Teen Titans Go definitely feels like it was catered more toward younger kids, like maybe like ages 5 to 8. I don't know. Just a lot of potty humor. Just a lot of like random jokes and stuff. Like, we're gonna sing a song about waffles in this episode, and we're gonna just not taking itself very seriously. Just these one-off 15-minute episodes that don't have like continuity, like building throughout the course of the show, like the original Teen Titans. Um, so that's kind of the closest thing that I can compare the original Paper Mario trilogy and the modern trilogy to is Teen Titans to Teen Titans Go. So what made this such a negative turning point for the Paper Mario franchise is that there was a number of things. It really can't be pinpointed to just one thing. And if you're already in the know, then all this is just kind of maybe common knowledge to you. And I promise we will talk about Origami King. That's what this whole podcast episode is about. We've spent 15 minutes, so we've not even got to that game yet. But anyway, so Sticker Star, the first thing it did wrong is that it went back to being a turn-based RPG like the first two Paper Mario games, which everybody wanted after Super Paper Mario, myself included. Even though I really enjoyed the gameplay in Super Paper Mario, I preferred the turn-based RPG mechanics. With the turn-based RPG, you do the battles. With the Mario RPGs in particular, you have kind of like these action commands where you have to like time your attacks and your defense. So it's like just adds kind of an extra layer of strategy. You kind of have to be on your toes, memorizing the enemy's attack patterns because you want to make sure that you guard appropriately and things like that. And then you had like this badge system, like this really deep system where you'd equip these badges that would augment your abilities. And of course, you would, as you do in RPGs, Pokemon or Fire Emblem or Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, Xenoblade, take your pick. You level up. You gain enough experience points or star points in the case of Paper Mario. You get 100 star points. You level up, and then that upgrades your abilities. You get stronger. You get more HP. Your attacks deal more damage. You get more flower points, which is basically mana in the Paper Mario games, and and yeah, that's just what an RPG is. That is until Sticker Star, where they decided we're going to have these turn-based battles, but they're going to be fundamentally useless because you're not going to get any experience. So there's no leveling up. There's no reason to engage in battles. Like, thank God that you don't have random encounters or anything like that. You can just ignore the enemies on the field. But that really kind of sucks because you're ignoring a big core part of the game that you're just opting out of, because it's like, well, there's no reason for me to do these turn-based battles because I don't really get anything out of it. If anything, doing battles is kind of a detriment, because another thing with Paper Mario Sticker Star is that you have a depletable inventory. So you find these stickers in the overworld that are basically your moves, like your hammer attack and your jump attack and things like that, that in, the previous Paper Mario games were just, you always had access to. Once you've got them, they never go away. But in this game, each sticker, once you use it up, you use it once and then it's just gone for good. So yeah, it was a detriment to get into battles because you would just waste your stickers. And then once you got into like a mandatory boss fight or something, you wouldn't have any stickers to fight with. So it's like there's, it's like that meme from Gravity Falls where Dipper says, wow, this is worthless. And then the other guy says, yeah, it's less than worthless, my boy. Doing battles in Paper Mario Sticker Star is less than worthless. So that in and of itself is a huge, game breaker. That sucks. But then beyond that, what to me is probably the most crushing blow of all of it, because even if the gameplay isn't great, the biggest thing that I play Mario RPGs for is the story and the characters. But with this game, from this point onward, marked a stark shift in Nintendo across especially the Mario RPG series, but kind of just more broadly Mario as a whole, what people describe as the Mario mandates, where essentially the developers behind these games weren't allowed to come up with their own unique original characters anymore. So, you couldn't have like in Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, you'd get all these really cool and unique, interesting partners that would join you. And each one would have their own motivation for joining you. You had Koops, and he was like this shy, timid, awkward Koopa. I can kind of relate to him if I'm being honest. and he wants to join Mario. Because he wants to get out of his shell, no pun intended, and be braver, more courageous, just like his dad. Because I talked about earlier how in the first chapter of the game, there's this dragon Hooktail that's been eating all the Koopas, and so you find out that Koopa's dad had went off to fight them. To fight the dragon, and he never came back. He's presumed to have been dead. This was like 10 years ago. So Koops joins you initially because he wants to avenge his father. And on top of that, in doing this, he's leaving behind, a girlfriend at home. She's telling him, don't do this, Koops. I love you. I don't want to see you get killed. I love you just the way you are. I don't care that you are timid and awkward or whatever. That's what makes you you. Please stay here. This is foolish. And so, they have kind of this altercation where she gets mad and she doesn't understand why this is so important to him and thinks that he's being selfish. So again, just a lot of depth and nuance to these characters that you don't see in a lot of other Mario RPG games. That's just one character. And then, another partner who joins you in that game is Admiral Bobbery, and he is a Bob-omb. And he has this really sad backstory where he used to be a sea captain, and he was always, out sailing the ocean and, discovering, islands and treasures and all that stuff, and he loved it. But he fell in love with this woman named Scarlet, and they got married, and you find out that tragically, one day when he was out on one of his sea voyages for several months and, had no contact with his wife, because she couldn't exactly write to him because, there's no postage when you're out sailing in the middle of the ocean and, no internet. And so he gets back from this, months-long voyage and finds out that his wife had been sick and died. And so he spends like all these years living in grief and decides that he's never going to sail the seas again. So he's been living this life of depression and solitude and kind of just locks himself away just with this crippling, debilitating guilt, thinking that his wife would still be there if not for his absence. And so you have to kind of help him to, like, I'm getting like goosebumps just talking about this game because I love it so much. Thousand Year Door is such a special game to me. And so you have to help him deal with his grief. And it really kind of, it chokes me up. Like in the game, I don't want to spoil too much if you've not played Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, but it is just, it's so good. And that's only like two characters I've named: Koops, Bobbery. There's so many, like dozens and dozens and dozens of characters that all have their own personality and backstory. But with Paper Mario Sticker Star, Nintendo said, nope, we're not doing that. You have to stick with the established canon Mario characters, like just the basic vanilla characters. We can't be coming up with any new original characters, whether it's creating a new species, because the Mario RPGs up to that point would introduce like all these characters that's like, well, you're not a Goomba or a Koopa, what even are you? Dupless is a really, really great Paper Mario character. I really shouldn't even say his name because that's kind of a spoiler. But he's sort of this Rumpelstiltskin type character because you have to like guess his name, and until you figure out what his name is, you can't proceed. I'm not gonna say too much else beyond that. I probably said more than I should have already. But he's like just kind of this sort of a ghost entity. Like he's like in a sheet, and you don't really know if there's anything like under the sheet, if there's like a face, or if that's just his whole like body. But so he's like a really mysterious character. And then you've also got this race called the X-Nauts, and they're like this this evil army, and they're unlike anything that we've ever seen in the Mario series up to that point. So with Paper Mario Sticker Star, not only was it a case of we can't have any original characters, and not even just introducing brand new races to the Mario universe, but even if it is a race that's already there, like a Koopa, it has to just be just a regular, normal Koopa with a green shell. Nothing remarkable about him. Do not give him a name. He cannot be named something clever. He can't be wearing a unique outfit. Just a bog standard Koopa, right? And Toad, I think people experienced a lot of Toad fatigue after these more modern Paper Mario games because it was the same thing. In Paper Mario, the Thousand Year Door, you had all these Toad characters that had really funny names. It was kind of like a play on words, where their last name would be like the letter T, T for Toad, but it would be like there might be one of them that's a cook, and her name is Zest T, right, or Taste T. And then you might have a character, a toad that really likes the cold, and so their name is Mint Tea because minty, fresh, kind of icy, and you just had all kinds of characters like that, and it was fun, and like they all had their own different clothes. There was one like female toad in Thousand Year Door who's got like this lavish dress, and she's got like these like fancy like earrings and all this jewelry, and she's got makeup on, and she's got her hair done up all crazy, and because she's like this wealthy bajillionaire lady, and then there's one toad who's like a sailor, so he's got like a little sailor hat on, and he's all banged up and rugged and dirty, so he's got scuffs all over him and torn clothes and stuff. So yeah, you just look at these individual toads, and each one, just by looking at their outfit, told a story. Because for the most part, no two characters looked exactly alike. There might have been a few repeats of the same character model, but it was very, very infrequent. And usually, if they did reuse it, it kind of made thematic sense where it's like, oh, all three of us are sailors. We're part of a sailor group, so we all dress the same. It's like, okay, it makes sense. But yeah, so for Sticker Star onward, it was like, okay, the toads, you've got your red toad. He's got his, red polka dots on his head. And then maybe, you might have the occasional green or blue or yellow one or something, but that's pretty much it. It's just the red toad with his little blue, vest thing and his white diaper or whatever that he wears and his brown shoes. And there's just like 100 of them all throughout the world. Every town you go to is just populated with just like the same copy and paste toad all over the place. And at this time, Miyamoto was really gung-ho on, and people go back and forth, it's kind of a debatable topic of whether, whose fault it is that Paper Mario ended up in this really vanilla state. Like, what was it? Was it Miyamoto himself, which, is the guy who created Mario? Because he was in this big kick at the time where he was like, no story, I really don't like story in video games. That's boring. Players don't want to read a bunch of text. It's got to be all just about the gameplay, baby, and nothing else. Then some people blame the guy who was kind of like the lead director, I guess, or producer on those games at the time, who was his name's blanking on me at the moment. Starts with a T. I know that it'll probably come to me here in a second. But yeah, people kind of go back and forth on whether to blame Miyamoto or this guy or what. But yeah, so you had these generic bog standard characters, and you also there was hardly any story. There was about as much dialogue as there needed to be just to get from point A to point B. It was just a standard, Bowser kidnaps the princess. Bowser doesn't even have a single speaking line in Super Paper Mario. I never realized that Paper Mario Sticker Star. I never realized that until somebody pointed it out. But yeah, he just doesn't talk in that game, which really sucks because in the original Paper Mario, but especially Thousand Year Door, Bowser is hysterically funny. He is such a cool character. That was another really cool thing about the Mario RPGs, is that more often than not, Bowser is not the main threat. There's like another villain, and so that makes Bowser feel threatened, and so he's like kind of off doing his own like B plot, like while Mario and the gang are doing one thing, Bowser's off doing this other thing, trying to figure out how he can like stop this new villain in town, that's kind of stealing his thunder. So yeah, in Thousand Year Door, Bowser is just such a comedic relief character, but he still has his bad A moments too. But he's so funny, so hilarious. It would just have me cracking up just off his dialogue. But yeah, he's just completely silent in this game, And so there's no plot, there's no original characters with the exception of Kirsty, who is really only there because she has to be. She's kind of your equivalent of, Navi or, Fi or, somebody like that from The Legend of Zelda, who is just a means to an end, just to kind of speak on Mario's behalf because Mario's not allowed to speak, and also to act as kind of a tutorial and tell you like, hey Mario, did you know you can press the A button to jump? That's kind of what her role is. So it just really sucked because it was like they took away everything that made Paper Mario great. And at the time, honestly, when Sticker Star first came out, I played it, I beat it, and I didn't hate it. I thought it was okay. I didn't love it. It was no Thousand Year Door for sure. But at the time, I thought, well, this is their first time making a handheld Paper Mario game, so they were probably restricted in a lot of ways, just by virtue of just the hardware limitations. So maybe that's part of why we didn't have this like greater story with all these characters and stuff and partners and all that. But I never could have imagined at the time that that was going to be the new standard moving forward. So in retrospect, I'm not at all a fan of Sticker Star. At the time, I thought it was just a one-off thing. It was like, well, for what it is, it's different. I guess I didn't find it as frustrating as some people did with like kind of the thing stickers, and I won't really go into all that because that didn't carry over into Origami King, which is what we'll be talking about here. But yeah, it was still it wasn't what I wanted from the Paper Mario franchise. And so then after that, you had Paper Mario Color Splash. And I don't want to talk too much about this game because at this point in time, Color Splash is the only Mario RPG that I've not played. I never owned Color Splash because once the game was announced and I realized, it was very apparent from the first trailer, this is essentially Sticker Star 2, then I just kind of, as an act of protest, I guess you could say boycotted the game. And same for Origami King for the longest time, where I didn't pick up either of those games because I was like, Sticker Star, that is not what I want from Paper Mario. So that was just a really hard pill to swallow. Again, going from like the original Teen Titans to Teen Titans Go, and you can look at that series, and like I said, I think they still make new episodes of Teen Titans Go, if I'm not mistaken. So clearly there's an audience for it, I guess. But those original fans who grew up with the original just felt so hurt and betrayed by it because it's like, this is not a faithful adaptation of this thing that I love that meant so much to me. And now they may feel that it's like, well, yeah, they can still go back and watch the original Teen Titans, but with this one having more episodes and still going on and being more relevant, you could say, after all these years, leaves those original fans to feel like that it's kind of hurt the legacy of that original series and maybe tainted it in some ways, which I think is kind of valid. Fortunately, it seems like Paper Mario may have avoided that, where the lesser good modern games continued on for way longer than the original, if that makes sense. Because like you had the trilogy of the classic Paper Mario games, you had the trilogy of the modern Paper Mario games, so it's kind of pretty even in that regard. And then they announced in a Nintendo Direct in late 2023, and then released it in about the middle of 2024, that they were going to be remaking a full remake of Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door from the ground up, with beautiful modern graphics. I don't know what just happened there with my recording stuff. It was like the camera glitched out. Hopefully everything still looks and sounds okay. But finally, after years and years and years of fans begging for it and just asking Nintendo, why are you being so tone deaf and not listening to us? Why won't you please just go back to the basics? Give us a classic Paper Mario, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And Nintendo was breaking a lot of stuff that they didn't need to be messing with at that time. Not just Paper Mario, but Mario Party, for example. During that late Wii, and then into the Wii U 3DS generation, getting rid of what made Mario Party so great, and now instead of these boards, we've got multiple branching paths, go whichever route you want and try to get stars and strategize and get different items on the map. Everybody would move together in a linear path from point A to point B in a car, and it was weird. It wasn't any fun. It felt entirely luck based with little to no skill whatsoever involved. Um, and they did that for several years despite nobody liking it. And the Mario RPGs were kind of the same way. But finally, I could breathe a sigh of relief when, the Thousand Year Door remake came out. It came out, I played it, I really enjoyed it. I don't know if I would say that it's better than the original, to be honest. They definitely, the Thousand Year Door remake definitely had some quality of life improvements, but there were some things I didn't love, like how they kind of tampered with the original, the script a little bit. They made some changes here and there to some of the jokes that I guess they didn't think would, had aged very well or maybe wouldn't be received as well in the year 2024, which personally I think is a little bit silly. For example, like they censored a joke about Bowser, wanting so he says he has a line where he says something like, because there's kind of like this whole thing where he doesn't realize he's talking to a poster of Princess Peach. He thinks that's actually her in the windowsill, but it's just a poster. So when he says something and she doesn't respond, he thinks Peach is just like giving him the silent treatment, and he's like, having a silent princess could have its perks, So he's being kind of sexist, I guess, about women being silent. But Bowser's a villain. He's supposed to be a bad guy. So I think if you take that out, cause it's like, well, we don't want people to misconstrue. We don't want people to think that our game's misogynistic. So we need to cut it out. It's like Bowser. He literally he kidnaps women on a daily basis. He tries to kidnap Peach. That's his whole shtick. He's sexist. That's why he's a villain. So I think that's a little bit lame. Kind of like how with the Avatar: The Last Airbender live action Netflix adaptation, they kind of neutered the whole character development of Sokka, where he starts out being sexist, but then he kind of over time learns to appreciate women. And I honestly, if it was just kind of a thing of just we just decided that in our adaptation we didn't really want to focus on that because whatever reason we wanted to flesh him out in other ways, then it's like, okay, that's fine. You took a creative liberty. But no, they explicitly said that they didn't want it to be controversial and they didn't want to offend or upset anybody. But it's but that's the whole point, is that he learns from it. And it's like in today's society, you're just expected to be perfect from the get-go and there can never be any growth. And then that leads into the whole thing about cancel culture. And I'm not going to go into all that today. But with that said, I still really enjoyed the Paper Mario remake, and so I played it and I beat it when it came out. And pretty much the first thing I did after I beat it was I ordered Paper Mario: The Origami King. I bought it off of eBay. I bought it, used secondhand because frankly I still didn't want to. I didn't want to contribute to that game's sales success because I still wanted Nintendo to make more classic, traditional Paper Mario games like Thousand Year Door. So I bought it secondhand, and it came in, and because the reason being because Nintendo, they'd finally given me what I wanted, so it didn't feel like I needed to picket or protest these other Paper Mario games anymore by refusing to play them. Nintendo had sort of appeased me, and I still want them to make new Paper Mario games that are like Thousand Year Door. But at the time I felt content. Like, okay, Nintendo's finally satiated this thirst that I've had for however many years it's been, 15, 16, 17 years since Super Paper Mario, and giving me another Paper Mario game that really resonates with me. So now I feel like, okay, I can go back and play Origami King, and I can go back and play Color Splash. Ideally, I would have liked to have played Color Splash first, then Origami King. But the reason I didn't is, frankly, just accessibility. Paper Mario Color Splash is kind of stuck on the Wii U, and I still have my Wii U, but it's inconvenient to hook it up. It's gathering dust somewhere. I think I actually lent it to my nephew, and I never got it back from him. So I need to get it back from him. and then I'd have to, charge up my gamepad because you have to use the gamepad with that game, and it'd just be really, really cumbersome. So instead, I was just like, okay, I'll start with Origami King. Because it's on the Switch, it's easy, it's convenient. I still play my Switch. I still have my Switch right here with me. I don't have to hook everything up. It's right there. I can play it in handheld mode. I can put it in the dock. Just very easily accessible. Um, so I've got it. It came in, and then I was just busy with a lot of other games, so I never really got around to it for about a year. Which brings us to now, when I finally played and beat Origami King. At the time of recording this video, I just beat Origami King maybe like 3 or 4 days ago. And not only did I beat it, but I more or less 100% in the game. I didn't do quite everything because, like, you can get these trophies in the game, which is essentially kind of like an achievement system. So there's a trophy for, doing at least 200 battles, and there's a trophy for this and that. And there's like this challenge gauntlet you can do where you've got to like refight all the bosses in the game that you already beat. So I didn't do that stuff, but I did pretty much everything else. I got 100% on like all the individual areas that you go to. There'll be like a checklist of things to find. There'll be like hidden toads that you have to rescue and question blocks that you need to find, and what's called not bottomless holes that you have to fill in. I don't know why they're called not bottomless holes. That's a little weird to me. But I did all that because it was fun and it was enjoyable exploring these environments and doing all that. And who knows? I might still go back maybe and get those remaining achievements that I don't have. I don't know. I could see it maybe getting a little bit tedious for some of them, but I'm not entirely ruling it out. Um, so, given that, I think that probably makes it pretty clear that I enjoyed Paper Mario: The Origami King. And, I don't know that I would say that I loved it. I certainly wouldn't say that it's a masterpiece on the level of Thousand Year Door or even Super Paper Mario or the original Paper Mario on the N64. But I really like this game more than I thought I would. Going into it, I thought that I would find the game mediocre. But it's not. It's definitely better than a mediocre game. It is fundamentally a good game. It's not perfect, but it's good. And I can appreciate it in a world now that Nintendo has given me the remake of Thousand Year Door, and where they've backtracked on all these weird restrictions they've had on the Mario IP, where it's like we can't have any original characters, we can't have turn-based combat mechanics, and if we do, we can't have like experience points and leveling up and partners and badges and all these other things that made it so great. Now that Nintendo has satiated me, I can go back and appreciate Paper Mario or the Origami King for what it is. I really think if I had picked up this game and played it in 2020 when it first came out, I would have had such a personal vendetta against it that I wouldn't have been able to fully enjoy it. And you might say, like, well, that's unfair. That's letting your biases ruin what's objectively not a terrible game. But, you have to understand when it's kind of like, this might be kind of a weird analogy, but it's like some restaurant that just serves like the best vanilla pudding you've ever had. It's like, oh my God, this is incredible. This vanilla pudding is just spectacular. Like I've never tasted any pudding of any flavor like the way they make their vanilla pudding. It's unparalleled. To all of a sudden they say, hey guys, we're changing the menu. We're getting rid of vanilla pudding and we're replacing it with this banana pudding. And it's like that banana pudding might still be good, but it's like you eat it and it's like, okay, but it's not as good as that vanilla. That vanilla pudding y'all had was just a bomb, And so I'm kind of upset and I'm hurt that it's like you got rid of it and replaced it with this lesser pudding, and it's like I can eat it and it might not be bad, but you're going to kind of have a personal vendetta a little bit against that banana pudding because it's like it's not like these two things are coexisting. It's like you explicitly said we're phasing out the vanilla because we want everybody to eat the banana instead. But now they've got vanilla back on the menu. And it's like, okay, finally you listened, you did what I wanted. Every once in a while, on occasion, the vanilla is still going to be my go-to. But now I might be more likely to get the banana every now and then, because you've still got that one on the menu. And, I might not want vanilla every single day of the week, but I still want it. Don't just completely take it away. But now I've got options again. And so now, now it makes the banana pudding a little bit more palatable. Maybe that's a weird analogy. It might not be a perfect comparison, but yeah, I no longer have that spiteful, bitter feeling toward Sticker Star and Color Splash and Origami King for ruining the Paper Mario franchise, because they've gone back and they're giving me and I think it probably will continue, because I think with the Switch era and now going into Switch 2, Nintendo has done a really, really, really good job listening to what people want. Like, it's just crazy. Back during the Wii U days, Nintendo was synonymous with tone deaf. I can't tell you how many people on the internet, just in comments and YouTubers and content creators, that would refer to Nintendo as tone deaf, myself included, because they wouldn't listen to what their consumers wanted. But they really, really course corrected hard. And with the Switch generation, and I would say they're listening to consumers more now than they ever have, which I think is great. You could argue that in some ways, creatively, that might be a little bit limiting, but no, they were limiting themselves by just doing whatever they wanted, by saying, like, we want Paper Mario to be more reined in and not try all these creative, unique, different things. But so with all that said, let's get into actually talking about Paper Mario: The Origami King. I don't know. I might have to change what I title this now. We've been recording for 46 minutes, and most of this has just been a deep dive on the Paper Mario series up to this point, and we've hardly talked about Origami King itself. I was going to title this video, like, I finally played Origami King, and it's actually pretty good. It's actually not that bad. I don't know. I would have found a more concise way to say it than that. But now I don't know. I might have to call it just Paper Mario Series Retrospective. I'm really not sure, because I don't know that original title will work now, considering how long it's taken me to kind of get to the real heart of it, I guess. But anyway, that'll be for me to figure out later. But so Paper Mario: The Origami King, I played it, I beat it, 100%ed it for the most part, and I thought it was pretty good. Now, I want to go ahead and get the negatives out of the way, but like, I wrote down a list of everything I liked about the game and everything that I disliked, and my negatives list is pretty small. It's only got like 4 bullet points, and then the positives, there's a lot there. There's a lot that I liked. So let's go into it. The biggest thing that I didn't like about this game is the combat. And for whatever reason, this game still, 3 Paper Mario games in a row, they've got this turn-based combat, and you don't get any experience. You don't level up for doing battles. So more often than not, in the overworld, if I see an enemy, I'm going to go out of my way to avoid them, because it's just, there's not a point. Fortunately, it's not like Super Paper Mario, where your inventory will be depleted, where you're essentially punished for doing the battles. You no longer have that stupid thing where it's like you find your attack options in the overworld, and you bring those into battle, and then you use them once and they're gone. None of that, which is a huge relief. So thank you for that, at the very least. Because that was even still kind of a thing in Paper Mario Color Splash. Again, I've not had a chance to play that one yet, but it also kind of had disposable inventory. But Sticker Star and Color Splash, despite getting rid of the experience points, there were still turn-based battles that felt somewhat traditional to the original Paper Mario. They got rid of a lot of the nuanced strategies that you could do and things like that, and planning out like, well, maybe I don't want to attack the enemy that's in front. Maybe I want to attack the one that's in the back, and, you don't have all these badges you can equip. You don't have partners that you can swap in and out. But, it was still turn-based. You take your turn, you'd attack. You have the action commands. You try to dodge it with perfect timing, and then you attack with perfect timing. But Origami King does this weird thing where, honestly, I might would say that the battles in this game might be just about the weakest of any Paper Mario game, even Sticker Star. I kind of hate to say that, but you've got this weird mechanic where it doesn't even really feel like a turn-based RPG. It's like it adds this weird puzzle element where you're on what I can only really describe as a circular grid. So if you imagine that, you've got like a pie chart or something, right? That's got like all these intersecting lines going through it. But then on top of that, like you've also got like smaller circles, like within the circles, like the circle is like a series of like rings. So yeah, it's like a circular grid where Mario's in the center and the enemies are spaced around the grid points of the circle, and you have a limited time. Starting out, it's maybe like 30 seconds or something, but then you can upgrade it to be like a minute or longer, like maybe 80 seconds. And during that time, you have to try to line up the enemies on that grid to where there's either four of them in a row, so that way you can use your jump attack and you can bounce on all four of them consecutively, or you have to arrange them in a like a 2x2 grid close to Mario, where he's able to whack them with his hammer attack. And it's weird. It can be kind of frustrating, and I'm just not a big fan of puzzle games like that. Like I've never been a fan of like Panel de Pon or like Puyo Puyo, like stuff like that, where it's like you're linking things together and you're trying to. I like Tetris and I like Dr. Mario, but that's pretty much it. I don't really play any other like puzzle games like that. And in some ways, that's kind of what this feels like, at least a little bit. And I'm just not a fan. I don't know if it's just my brain just doesn't work that way. If I'm just more left brained than right brained, I don't know. Because it feels more like I've always considered myself a very like artistic, creative person. I like thinking outside the box. This battle mechanic feels very much like the other side of the brain, like very mathematic, rigid, like there's only one correct solution, you know? And there may be some exceptions to that. I think there's maybe some puzzles that you can kind of figure out like two different solutions, like, oh, you can line them up this way or this way. But for the most part, there's like one intended solution. And then once you get them lined up, if you do it successfully, then your attack goes up by 1.5 times, so you're stronger. And in a lot of cases, you're kind of just guaranteed to kill them in one hit, so it really takes away. Like, the only strategy in battles is just lining up that grid. And if you do it successfully, then 80-90% of the time, you're going to get through the battle taking zero damage, because the enemy's not even going to get a chance to attack you, because you're going to kill them on the first attack, because you're going to be that strong if you line up that grid correctly. But then if you line it up incorrectly, then you're going to take a crap ton of damage. And you're hardly going to be able to hurt them. So it's this really weird, I don't even know if you'd call it a difficulty curve, because it kind of all just comes down to, like, if you are good at lining up those ring puzzles, then this is going to be the easiest turn-based RPG you've ever played. And if that's a struggle for you, it's going to be the hardest RPG you've ever played, because you're going to lose like a third of your health in one turn because you didn't do the stupid ring puzzle right. So I really didn't like that. And again, you don't get experience for doing it. You do get coins. You get a pretty good lot of coins for doing battles, especially like if you line them all up correctly. If you solve the puzzle and if you beat it without taking damage, there's a good opportunity to get coins. And coins are very important. There's a lot of stuff you can buy at shops that can upgrade your abilities and stuff like that. But even so, I still found myself avoiding battles a lot of the time. And it can be very frustrating, because if you're not careful, you can actually spend more coins in battle than you get. So you can spend coins by doing what the game literally calls buying time, which that's pretty funny. I like that they call it that. But yeah, so because again, you have a time limit to set all this up. And if you're taking too much time lining it up, then you can pay some money, and it can be like, I think 10 coins equals 1 second or something like that. So I think if I'm mathing right, again, that's not my side of the brain really, but I think 100 coins, if you pay 100 coins, that's only like 10 seconds. So, if you want to fill back your timer to having like a full 60 seconds like you started with or whatever, that's going to cost you like 600 coins. Alternatively, if you're running out of time and you can't figure out the solution to the puzzle, you can also pay for some toads who kind of spectate in the audience to help you out, and they'll just straight up solve the puzzle for you. You can just like give them money, and it's like, here, do this and just do the battle for me. So it makes the whole thing feel kind of pointless. It's like I don't know. It's like doing a Zelda boss, and it's just like, oh, you can pay them, and an NPC like Tingle will just come in and go Kulimpa and throw confetti in their face, and it's like, you did it, you beat the boss because you spent rupees. So it's kind of weird. But I would try to avoid doing that. But sometimes I would be spending just hundreds and hundreds of coins to get more time. That it's eventually like, I'm going to run out of coins unless I just pay for these toads to give me the solution. So it's like, I hate to do that, but I feel like you're kind of forcing my hand here. I'd like to be able to take my time and figure it out on my own, but you're not giving me that opportunity. So I was not a fan of the battles. So that sucked. But that's probably the biggest negative. The other big negative is that there is still a lack of original characters in this game. You've got a few, kind of. So you've got this whole. It's called Paper Mario: The Origami King. So the whole dynamic. You've got this villain named King Ollie. So you've got a different villain from Bowser again for the first time in a very long time. So that's nice, at least. But he's one of only like maybe 3 original characters. You've got King Ollie, who is kind of. I'm trying to mute my phone here, but he's. Oh my God! Why are my notifications blowing up? Good Lord! And why is my mute button not working? Anyway, sorry about that. But King Ollie, he's just a very lame villain. He's just a folded piece of origami. And every time he shows up, and then you've got his like villain theme that plays, and he goes through this monologue about why we must rid the world of flat 2D paper and replace it with origami in my image, and it's just cringe. It just he doesn't have the same level of depth and complexity, despite being origami and him having beef with all these two-dimensional characters. Literally, he's a very two-dimensional villain compared to in previous Paper Mario games you had Grotus, the leader of the X-Nauts, and then in Super Paper Mario you had Count Bleck and like Dementio and like just the really cool characters. And then in like the Mario and Luigi games, you had Fawful, you had the Shroob princess, who's like this princess of this alien race. She didn't really have a whole lot in terms of character development or personality, because she just kind of spoke gibberish because she's an alien, so you never really got to know what she was thinking or what her motivations were. But that was kind of cool in its own way. But anyway, but yeah, so you've got King Ollie, who's kind of a crummy villain, if I'm being honest, and his sister Olivia, who joined you as kind of what Kirsty was in Super Paper Mario, or sorry, Paper Mario Sticker Star, or what Huey is in Paper Mario Color Splash, as your obligatory assistant character who speaks on Mario's behalf, or he's a silent protagonist and also kind of gives you hints and tutorial stuff. But she does have a little bit more depth to her personality than like, say Kirsty. But I didn't really love her that much. She's like very perky and upbeat, but kind of to a fault. And she's also very kind of ditzy, and it's supposed to be endearing, but I don't know. I just found her to be kind of annoying and kind of sappy. A lot of her lines of dialogue. And speaking of sappy, that brings us to another of the only original characters in this game, and that's the Great Grand Sappy, who you meet in like very early. What's basically the prologue of the game. Very early on, you meet him, and he's a tree with like a mustache, basically, and he quits being significant after like the first hour of the game. But that's pretty much it. You've got some other sort of kind of characters. People will probably get mad at me at this point and say, well, what about, you've not talked about Bobby yet. But Bobby is another one. He's a Bob-omb, his name's not even Bobby. His name is just Bob-omb because again at this time Nintendo was so restricted creatively that unlike Thousand Year Door where it's like we can make this Bob-omb, we can put him in a sailor outfit, we can give him a crusty old beard and mustache. He's this old, withered sailor, and give him this sad backstory about his wife who died, and give him a name and call him Bobbery. And he's got his little sailor hat on. It's just a regular, black Bob-omb from Mario with the white eyes, and he's got his little fuse up top. That's the one thing about him. He's missing his fuse, and then he's got his little orange feet or whatever. And he explicitly says, I'm a Bob-omb. You can call me Bob-omb. All of us Bob-ombs, we're named Bob-omb, And Olivia is like, you know what? I'm going to call you Bobby. So that's the only reason that he's called Bobby. That's not really his name. And I would imagine, I don't know how they handled that in the Japanese version. I kind of feel like maybe that was a liberty that the American localization took because they knew that people were really upset about not having original characters. So the localization team was just like, well, let's just have it. We can maybe kind of work around this where it's like his official name is Bob-omb, but we'll let this one character call him Bobby. That way it's like he's an actual character with a name. So that kind of irked me. And Bobby, I don't know if I should avoid spoilers for it. But, it does. There is something that happens with him that's very heavy that, frankly, I don't think we've ever really seen, at least not on screen like this, in any other Mario RPG game. So I can respect it and I can appreciate it for that. And they do flesh out his character a little bit. And what happens is relatively sad. Not as sad as it could have been, though, if Bobby was actually his real name, and if he actually dressed different from all the other Bob-ombs, and if physically he had features that looked different from other Bob-ombs, regardless of whether he was wearing clothes. And so, there was just a lot more that they could have done with him to make what ultimately happens a lot more impactful. And, which is unfortunate. I think it's just a real missed opportunity, but I would like to see more of that in future Paper Mario games, what they did with Bobby's arc, we'll say. But yeah, so I don't know. And then you meet this this captain whose name is Captain T. Ode, and it's his name, it's just Toad. You couldn't give him a real name. And it's they have a couple characters like him that's kind of he wears a cape and stuff, but it's not enough. And the biggest offender is the Legion of Stationery, which is just oh my god, what are we even doing here, guys? So the development team, they were so restricted by these Mario mandates where it's we can't have original characters, that the bosses you fight in this game include a roll of tape, a stapler, a pair of scissors, a hole puncher. What else? They're all so memorable. It's a a box of colored pencils, and I think there's at least one more. And it's not like Banjo-Kazooie where they even slapped a pair of eyes on it. No, it's just a photorealistic box of colored pencils. It's just scissors. And they talk, but they don't have a face. It's just and it's they tried to give them a personality. The box of the box of colored pencils speaks with a French accent. It's bonjour, I am colored pencils, and I will stab you with my pencils, oui, or so, And it's the game doesn't have voice acting, but the dialogue is written as if the character had a French accent. But he doesn't have a beret, he doesn't have a mustache. It's these pins here. It's this is the boss. This box of pins. It's mind-numbingly stupid. Oh, the other one was a rubber band, by the way. But it's so dumb. It's like you can't, you know, even if you're limited like within these constraints, I feel like again, I've not played Paper Mario Color Splash up to this point. I kind of feel like I would like Color Splash better than Origami King because that game it felt like did take advantage of the existing Mario characters a lot better than this game. So this game does have like Birdo shows up in it, which she's been in like all the modern Paper Mario games. But Color Splash really took it a step further, and so you've got like Petey Piranha Plant in there, and all the Koopalings, because the seven Koopalings, they've been around since like the beginning. So Nintendo was like, yeah, sure, you can put the Koopalings in there. They're Mario mainstays, and they already kind of have their own quirky personalities. So even if you're not allowed to make new characters, you're still able to kind of get something out of this limitation by making the most of the hand that you're dealt in ways that I just don't think that the Origami King quite managed to do. But yeah, these bother like it just feels so offensive, just like a slap in the face to go from these amazing characters in the classic Paper Mario games to just it's a stapler, it's a hole puncher, and they like hype it up like it. They'll have this really intimidating like dun 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 dun, dun music when you're fighting this talking pair of scissors. And I guess they're trying to be funny, like they're trying to make it like a silly, like, haha, isn't this hilarious how weird and silly and quirky this is that you're fighting an evil sentient pair of scissors. But it's not. It just comes across as very just cringe. And it just how we got here from like the amazing villains and just characters in general from Thousand Year Door, like Grotus and the X-Nauts and Lord Crump and Professor Frankly and all these other fantastic characters. I don't know, but here we are. So those are my biggest knocks against the game, and I know I've spent a long time ragging on them because those are kind of big deals. The lack of original characters, and the combat not being that enjoyable. But I really do like everything else about this game, for the most part. So let's start getting into some of those positives. The only other negative I want to touch on real quick because I didn't quite talk about that. We already talked about the battle system, but something I'm just kind of looking at the notes I wrote down here. I did note like you don't really have partners in the traditional sense, but that was another thing that was like really frustrating about this game. So you would meet like in individual chapters a character that would become your ally or your partner that would kind of join your party for that one specific chapter. But when you got into battles, you couldn't actually like fight with them. It was just kind of like an AI thing. So like if you attacked all the enemies, then like while it's still your turn, like if you didn't kill them all, then that character's AI would attack them for you. So there's no way you could strategize like you could in like Thousand Year Door or the original with your partners. They just kind of do their own thing. But what made it really frustrating, like especially with Bobby, it kind of gets better as it goes on, as you get like better allies. But he has probably like at least a 50% chance of failing when it's his turn to attack. He'll just kind of like walk up and then just trip and fall on his face. And it's like, Bobby, you're really, again, that makes what happens to him a lot less impactful because it's like, buddy, up to this point, you have not really been doing anything for me. So yeah, but anyway, getting on to the goods about this game. Despite being so limited with the mandates and the original characters, I did actually find the story engaging. And this is something that really kind of shocked me, coming off the heels of Mario and Luigi Brothership, which just released last year, which, felt like at the time when it was announced, it felt like finally we're getting a new original Mario RPG that's not a remake that goes back to the classics with all these original characters. And that game had a lot of original characters, but they all felt very one note and just lacked a lot of depth and personality, and things of that nature. So I wasn't at all invested in the story or the stakes or the characters or what was happening. But this game I actually was pretty invested. Like characters Bowser and Bowser Jr. and Kamek and other characters like that. I enjoyed the writing. I thought they were, they weren't as well written as like in Thousand Year Door. But but it was good. It was entertaining, which I can't really say about the dialogue in Brothership, unfortunately. I wanted to like that game so much, but it just there were so many points during that game, both in terms of with the story and the gameplay, where it's just like I'm not at all engaged in this. It's getting very boring and repetitive and tedious, and I really had to force myself to finish that game. I didn't have to force myself to finish Origami King, even though I didn't like the battles. Uh, I could ignore them for the most part, except for the bosses. And it's like, well, it sucks that that's kind of a big chunk of the game I'm missing out on because I don't find it fun and I don't gain any experience from it, anyways. You know, it didn't make the gameplay feel shallow. I think the game would have been a lot better if they were just like, because it's like if you don't want Paper Mario to be a traditional turn based RPG, stop putting these turn based battle mechanics in it. Do like you did in Super Paper Mario. If Paper Mario the Origami King was just exploring the environment and talking to NPCs and finding toads and doing all this other stuff that you do along the way, filling in these holes in the environment, because that's a thing, and that's kind of a satisfying mechanic. There'll be like these tears in the paper, like just holes in like the floor and on the walls and stuff, and Mario can like throw out confetti and fill them in. And so it's pretty fun going around patching up all the confetti and stuff, and then you can run out, and so you have to like hammer like bushes and trees and stuff to get more like construction paper that you can use to throw to fill in these holes. It's fun, and finding the toads, they've been like folded up into these weird origami shapes. So one of them might be folded up into a boat or into like an animal. Like one of them might be a butterfly or a flower. So you constantly have to be like paying, like having kind of like laser sharp focus in the environment, like looking around every nook and cranny and seeing like, is there anything here that's like out of place? Like, does that flower look a little suspicious? And if so, you whack it with your hammer, and then it unfolds, and it's a toad. And he's like, "Hey, thanks for rescuing me." And it's a really satisfying gameplay loop. It's fun. Um, so I really feel like having turn-based battles in this game just was not necessary. Um, because especially considering they have this, which I think is kind of a cringy name. But conceptually, from a gameplay standpoint, they're kind of fun. They're kind of enjoyable. These battles that take place in the overworld that aren't turn based against what the game calls it's kind of like a play on paper mache. They're paper macho enemies. Paper mache, paper macho. I don't know. I think that's incredibly corny, but whatever. But they're kind of fun. They attack you in the field, and you've got to sneak up on them with your hammer and whack them in the weak spot. And those battles are pretty enjoyable. I kind of wish like that all the battles in the game were like that. But alas, that's not the case. You got the weird ring system where you're rotating the whole stage and everything that I just did not like. But again, I can ignore it. So it's like I can rag on the battles all day long, but I don't have to do them. And when I don't do them, there's still a lot of other stuff to enjoy. I don't feel like I'm missing a chunk of the game. I don't have this like empty sinking feeling because I'm not doing the battles that like, man, this game is really, I've got like this battle shaped hole in my heart. Like, no, because again, Super Paper Mario didn't have turn based battles. It was just a fun puzzle platformer game. And I think that's what this should have been. Just focus on that and don't worry about the turn based battles, because around this time Nintendo had this mentality where like one of the producers was interviewed. I think before this game, it was when Color Splash came out, but I'm sure they had that same mentality when they were making Origami King, where she said, Paper Mario games, they're not really RPGs. They're like puzzle adventure games at this point, because she was like, we don't really need to have two Mario RPG series because we've already got the Mario and Luigi games. But like they both play differently, and I think there's absolutely a place for both of them to coexist. But that was their mentality at the time, and it's like, okay, fair enough. If you really feel that way, then why are you like still flirting around with the idea of making it an RPG if you're not going to fully commit? Like, just go all or nothing. Go all in. Make it traditional like Thousand Year Door, or just cut it out completely. No turn-based battles. Instead of doing these turn-based battles where you got to do something weird and quirky and different with it just for the sake of doing something different, regardless of whether or not it lands. But But yeah, I enjoyed exploring the world, finding all these hidden toads. And some of them are in pretty obscure spots to find, and also you get rewarded for finding and hitting all of the hidden question blocks in a given area. And these question blocks, there's some that's just out in the open that you can see, but there's a lot of invisible blocks too. And you might think, well, that would get kind of tedious trying to find them all. Are you just like jumping around like aimlessly, just like hoping that eventually you'll hit your head on a on a block that you can't see? But as the game goes on, you get this little bell accessory that you can equip it, and it will alert you if you're in a general proximity of where a question block is at, or you can get one that's also where it'll kind of alert you if you're near a toad or if you're near a treasure chest that gives you like a little standee that you can unlock. You can only have one of those equipped at a time, but I didn't really mind that. So you kind of have to, kind of adds a little bit of, I guess, artificial replay value because you have to kind of go through every area with a fine-toothed comb, maybe a few times, with each different thing equipped. But even if that still proves too tedious, having that bell that dings when you're near, you also get this like sonar for each of those collectibles. That's kind of just this big, like, looks like a siren light on Mario's head, this red flashing light that spins around. And yeah, it's kind of just like with each step you take, like if you get closer, it'll start spinning faster. And then if you get further away, it slows down. So you can kind of get a lot more accurate with locating where this invisible collectible is at. And yeah, it was fun. Because honestly, if I really take off the rose tinted glasses, and admit it, because I heard other people say it when the game first came out, and I would watch like reviews like Arlo or like other people reviewing Origami King, and they would say that one thing that this game does better than Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door or really any Paper Mario game is that the level of exploration is so good. They've got these big open areas that you can explore that just feels so. It makes it in a lot of ways feel like a living, breathing world. Like you can imagine that people live here. Because like as much as I love Thousand Year Door, it pains me to admit. But yeah, a lot of the chapters it was very linear, where you would just be going through these like straight corridors. It would be like here's a loading zone that takes you back to the last area, and then you're just kind of going in this straight area, and then here's another loading zone leading into your next area. And there'd be some areas that would be a little bit more open, but a lot of it was just kind of going from left to right and right to left, and not a whole lot of exploring. And then you'd have some entire chapters that's like just on a train, so you're just kind of backtracking through the same couple rooms, or like this chapter is just in this arena in Glitzville, this one floating island with this one big building, and that's pretty much what the whole chapter is confined to. And what they do with that is still really great and creative and good in its own way. But but yeah, if there is one thing that future Paper Mario games can learn from this game, it's that feeling of exploration with these big open environments that, again, feel like actual places that could exist in this world. And like you still have loading zones, like every Paper Mario game has had them, but they feel less prominent here than ever before. Where it's not just like these tiny areas and then like bam, here's another loading zone, bam, here's another loading zone. And it's not that like saying Thousand Year Door or these other Mario RPGs, it's not like the loading was ever that long. It's like it'd be a second or two and then you keep going. It didn't really interrupt the gameplay experience, so I didn't mind it that much. But it does kind of break away from your immersion of like that this is a real place. So that does kind of make it all the more kind of bittersweet, though, that you've got probably the most realistic world in a Paper Mario game that you could see people living in, but you still don't exactly have a whole lot of characters and NPCs that feel realistic, because a lot of them are still just copied and pasted toads, with a couple exceptions. One being when you get to the Shangri Spa, which is a place toward the end of the game. You've got a bunch of toads, and they're all dressed the same way, but they're like Cupid or something. Like they're angels. They've got like a little, they're wearing like a, what do you call it? Like a little tunic or something, like someone in like ancient Greece would wear. What do you call those things? Like the cloth fabric white, what like you'd see like Caesar wear in like Rome or something, but they would have that. They might even have, I can't remember if they have like the little wreaths on their head, like a Roman elite, I guess would, but they got like wings on their back, and it's cute, and like that's what I want to see more of in this game. There's not enough of that where it's like, even if you're not making original characters, taking existing ones, but just giving them a change of costume, giving them a different outfit, like that's cute. The only other real example of this is when you go to Shogun Studios, which is kind of this neat area where it's like a uh, Japanese themed amusement park, and you've got a few characters there that are dressed up for it, that have like a one of them, he's got like a mustache and a beard, like a Koopa with a mustache and a beard, and he's got like a staff and stuff, and then I think there's like a maybe like a ninja or like a shy guy or somebody, I forget, who's got one of those, what do you call them, like those pointy like Asian like hats. It's like I don't know if they're like a wooden hat or like a straw hat. I don't really know what they're made out of, but you know what I'm talking about. But like they got one of those on, and it's like, even then it's kind of like how you can see that that's them kind of trying to tiptoe around the mandates, because it's like, oh well, he wasn't born that way. It's not like that Koopa actually has a beard and a mustache. He's cosplaying. They dressed up like this because they're park fanatics who are really excited to go to this Japanese themed amusement park. So they don't typically dress like this, and he doesn't actually have a mustache. He has this fake mustache because he's in costume. So the game does a lot of that to try to dance around the Mario mandates, where it's like, no, Miyamoto or whoever's responsible for the Tanabe, that's the guy's name I couldn't think of earlier. No, we didn't come up with an original character. We didn't give him a unique outfit. This is just a costume they're just wearing for here. Like when they go home, they'll take it off and they're just a regular Koopa with a green shell. Don't worry. But I gotta get a sip of water. But yeah, so I wish there was a lot more of that. I wish that the characters and the NPCs that populated these worlds were more had a lot more depth to them. But the actual worlds, the environments themselves, really really cool. Um, I enjoyed, and I disagree with. I think it might have been Tanabe when discussing the game talked about how, with like Thousand Year Door, and like those classic Mario RPGs, there was a lot of dialogue, and I strongly opposed him saying this, but he said he didn't like all that dialogue and like a lot of action happening like off screen and like being told about stuff. He said he really wanted the game to have like he wanted Origami King to have like memorable moments where like there's this little thing that happens that would like really stick out in the player's mind as like from a gameplay or like an action perspective that you weren't expecting, is like these fun little moments. And while I disagree with him about the whole story thing, I do think, playing the game, I do see what he's talking about, and I can appreciate how there are a lot of little fun moments in Origami King where the gameplay does something kind of interesting. Like one that stands out to mind, probably one of the most memorable parts of the game, because getting the trophy from this was extremely difficult, like shockingly so. Called the Eddy River. You have to like, is that an actual thing? Are there rivers called Eddy Rivers? If it's a pun, I don't know what the pun is there, so I don't know if that's just like a type of river, an Eddy River. But it just makes me think of like Ed and Eddie or something. I don't know. But anyway, the Eddy River. It's in that second area of the game, the same one with that Shogun Studios. It's like the whole ninja thing. That whole world's got kind of like an Asian sort of vibe to it, but it's also kind of like autumn time setting, so that's kind of cool. Um, but but yeah, you're rafting down like the river rapids with this toad, and yeah, it just kind of changes up the gameplay. It kind of feels like, the OG Super Mario RPG or something, where there's like that one river mini game where it's like you're barreling down the river and you've got to like hop and get coins and stuff. So they give you this challenge where you get through the river, and you're trying to evade like whirlpools, and you also don't want to like hit the boat against like the rocks or anything, because you have like a limited amount of hearts, and if you run out of all your hearts, then you die. Um, so um, so yeah, it's pretty fun just navigating the obstacle course, trying to get all the collectibles along the way. But the really challenging thing is after you complete it, then the toad who like helps you navigate down the rapids says, "Hey, if you do it again, but this time collect all the coins without missing one, I'll give you a special reward." And by God, I probably tried like 20 times to do this successfully. I don't know how it took me forever to successfully complete the Eddy River. Easily the hardest part of the whole game. But it was fun though. I enjoyed it. I probably wouldn't have kept at it if I wasn't having a good time with it. The music was very enjoyable. You know, you've kind of got this very traditional Oriental sounding music playing. It's very kind of relaxing. So even though you're doing this very stressful thing, you've just got these woodwind instruments, and you just like I don't know the names of like traditional Asian instruments, but just really relaxing, calming music playing that kept me from getting too frustrated. I do think that the Eddy River challenge was a little too long though, getting all the coins without missing. You're talking like probably a good, I don't know, 2 maybe 3 minutes. Like it just keeps going and going and going. It's like I feel like this should have been like a 60-second, maybe 90-second challenge at most. But like that's a lot. Like if you spend like 2 minutes doing that, and then you like miss a coin right at the end, like that's really frustrating. So I think that could have been a little shorter. But it was kind of a fun little moment in the game, and the game's sprinkled with a lot of that. So I do get to an extent what Tanabe was saying. I don't think you have to sacrifice the story for that. But like there's one part of the game in chapter 4. Well, the game's not really divided into chapters like the old Paper Mario games, but I guess like World 4 or whatever, where it's basically just a big nod to Wind Waker, and it's so cool. They just straight up call it the Great Sea, and you're sailing around, in this ship and exploring this very vast open waters, and you can like go to all these different like islands and like chart a path on your map. Like your sea chart gets updated in real time whenever you find an island, so it feels straight up like Wind Waker. It's even got like the glowing circles, like the rings in the water that'll like make a noise, and you can well, I guess it's not actually got a circle, but these areas on the map where you go to these certain coordinates like on the map grid, and you can like drop down a little submarine and kind of go spelunking. That's probably not the right word. I think spelunking, I always think it means like finding treasure underwater, but I think spelunking is more to do with like cave diving or something. But anyway, whatever the term is for finding treasure underwater, you get to do that, and yeah, it feels so much like Wind Waker, which is like my favorite Zelda game and one of my favorite games of all time. So that's really cool. And also in that chapter, you go to this cruise ship called the Princess Peach that you get to explore. So that's pretty cool. Um, and yeah, and also back in um, that dojo area I was talking about, that Japanese amusement park. There's like this little ninja game that you play at one point that's pretty cool. I ended up having to look up an IGN guide to complete that area because you can get through it. I got through it just fine, but to get one of the trophies in the game, you have to like find all like I think 25 of these like hidden ninja toads, and there were a few that like I could just not find for the life of me. So I had to look up a guide to find the last couple of those, but that was an enjoyable part of the game. So yeah, there are a lot of things that stood out in my mind as like, yeah, that was a fun little diversion from the usual gameplay. Oh, I guess I was thinking about rings that glow, and I guess what I was thinking of, because there's something like that in the previous chapter. I think it's like maybe the third world of the game where you're in the desert, and you get in like what's basically like the Goomba shoe or the Kuribo's shoe from Mario 3, but it's got like it's equipped with like wheels, and so you're zooming around through the desert dunes, and you've got your little Professor Toad with you, who even though he doesn't have like an original name, he's at least got kind of like an archaeology outfit on, so that's something, you know. And you can get out of the vehicle and go to these glowing spots, and he'll like dig and uncover treasure for you. So that's kind of a good way to grind for coins, because a lot of those rings will respawn, so you can go back and get them again later. But that was kind of neat getting to do that. Um, I'm trying to think just like other areas of the game that stood out in my mind. But so yeah, there were a lot of like fun little moments like that I could appreciate. And I'll be honest with this game. Maybe I should have mentioned this sooner. I don't know. Technically, I didn't go into this game playing it blind. I did watch somebody when, like, around the time the game first came out. Like, I was kind of like, this isn't for me. I'm not going to get it. But I'm curious enough that, like, I'll watch somebody play through it. So I did watch somebody who, like, streamed this game. I don't remember if it was on Twitch or YouTube or what. I think it was Derek Bittner from, he worked at Game Explain, and then he went to, like, they started Good Vibes Gaming. I don't remember if he was still at Game Explain at that point or if they had already made GVG a thing. But either way, though, I think it was him I watched play through the game. I've also seen him play through Color Splash, so whenever I play that game, I won't be going in completely blind either. But I'd forgotten a decent amount of things, and so it was fun, even though it wasn't like a complete surprise necessarily. It's a big difference actually playing it for myself versus just watching him. I can appreciate like, yeah, this is fun. I'm having a fun time doing this. Um, and and yeah, so like I said, I was engaged with the story. Something I've not really talked about yet is kind of like the origins of King Ali. There's this point, it's decently far into the game, maybe in like the fourth area. The game's only got like maybe 6 worlds, so you're talking like 2/3 of the way through the game where you actually find the Toad who constructed the evil origami King Ali and his sister Olivia, and like just made all this origami. 'Cause he was just like so passionate about it. He is just a generic Toad though. Well, he's got like maybe a little apron on or something that's got paint on it to show he's artsy, but otherwise he's just a Toad. He doesn't really have a name. But that was kind of cool. I remember that from Derek's playthrough when I watched him, so it wasn't really a surprise in this game. But it was just a level of story that I wasn't expecting to see. Like, oh, this is how he was crafted, and like, this guy after he was created, he got sealed away because like Ali went evil, and he like trapped him in the wall. I think King Ali's motivation is really weak, though. I thought it was really stupid because it's like he has this vendetta against like all the Toads specifically, but also just everything that's made of 2D and that's flat, that's not origami. And it's all because he hates his father, that one green Toad who created him, because because the Toad that created him scribbled on him. He's like, he made me imperfect. He like wrote some nonsense because he doesn't respect and appreciate origami, and which is already just a weird, dumb motivation. And then at the end of the game, you find out, and it's like, I know this is kind of probably a spoiler territory, but it's not really that much of a spoiler. But you find out like what he wrote on there. It was like, you're gonna do great things, Ollie. I love you. Be a good person. And then Ollie feels stupid. It's like, you mean all this time it was this beautiful message of love and whatever. So it's just kind of like, yeah. The entire reason you did all this was stupid. So that was a little like just like you just want to wring Holly's neck like, you freaking idiot. But yeah, there's something I could say, like I don't want to get too spoilery with it, but something with the ending too that kind of surprised me, similar to the Bobby character, where I was like, okay, they leave it a little bit more ambiguous here, but it's like, okay, that was... I'm trying so hard to tiptoe around. I don't know how important this even is. I guess if you've played if you've not played Origami King, then skip like 60 seconds ahead. But so Bobby, because spoilers starting right now. So we were talking about Bobby. Bobby dies. He sacrifices himself. He has he gets his fuse. He has amnesia, but then he gets his memories back. He remembers where he came from and like what happened that caused him to get amnesia. His friends that went on a cruise together and got lost along the way, and he loses his fuse because they were attacked by a blooper. He gets it back. He ends up blowing up himself. He sacrifices himself to save Olivia because she gets trapped under this giant immovable rock. And then kind of at the end of the game, Olivia kind of sacrifices herself to stop her brother, and like I don't think we see them again. So it's a little ambiguous, but they might have both died too. I'm really not sure. But yeah, so that I can appreciate the game for, even if it was very conservative in a lot of ways, for being creatively liberal and having the guts to kill a character on screen. It feels completely undermined with Bobby though. When later on in the game, you're flying around Bowser's airship, which is another fun little moment, and having to like shoot at enemies that are attacking you, like all these paper airplanes flying at you, and you're literally shooting out like a bunch of bob-ombs who look exactly like Bobby, and it's like, okay, so we're just these are just disposable, inventory now that just they're just gunfire. That's all that they're really good for. After we had this whole character, Mario's just slaughtering them by the hundreds here, just committing bob-omb genocide. So I don't know. That was kind of weird, but anyway, spoilers over. But so I can appreciate that about the game. Visually, I think the game looks pretty solid. From what I've seen, I don't know if it necessarily looks better than Color Splash, but it does look good, and it's a very high resolution too. It looks very crisp, even in handheld mode, which you can't say for every Switch game, even every first party game. Especially if it's a kind of got larger environments like this. Like I know, like Xenoblade 2, for example. I don't have it, but from my understanding, it has a very low resolution in handheld mode. But this game looks super sharp. I didn't notice like a bunch of like fuzzy, jagged pixel edges or anything like that. It looked really good. And obviously, this game isn't like a seamless, massive, huge open world where you've got full camera control. You've got a fixated camera, and these are big areas, but they're not like, mind-blowingly huge. So, it makes sense, I guess. But still, it looks really sharp. It looks good. The music I thought was really solid. I wouldn't say it's like got the best soundtrack of any Paper Mario game or anything, but it's solid enough. It's on par with a lot of other Paper Mario games. I think Super Paper Mario probably has my favorite music in the series. There's just a lot of just like really emotional pieces in that one that I just find very, very moving and really enhance the story in that game so much. Because like I said, that was one of the few games that made me like tear up, and a big part of that was just the phenomenal music in that game. One of the best soundtracks from any game I've ever played. This game, like not every track left a super strong impression with me, but a lot of them did. There was a lot of really good. There was no bad music. There was some that was more forgettable than others. Whereas I would say like Super Paper Mario, like pretty much every track in that game I thought was like phenomenal. But still, there's some standouts that are like really, really great. Like particularly at the end of the game when you're in King Ollie's castle. It's kind of a remixed version of kind of the game's main theme. But it's got like a sort of like a female chorus in the background, doing kind of like an acapella thing. And I love like female vocals so much, in particular. Male vocals can be good too if you've got kind of like a chorus, going on in the background, especially for like a villain theme or something, kind of just like that Latin chanting or something. But yeah, the female vocals they've got, it's just really so good. A fantastic track in the game, every bit on par with a song you'd hear in Thousand Year Door or even Super Paper Mario. And there's a few like that. But that was one I really, really loved. I also really liked when you're at the hotel in Sniff City, which might sound kind of a sus name for a city. Like what kind of people live here? But that's in Mario. There's a race of characters, kind of like Shy Guys, called Sniffets. So it's inhabited by Sniffets, and it's called Sniff City. And it's this beautiful like desert city that it's like it's nighttime, and there's all these neon lights. So it's almost like Las Vegas or something. And they got like this really cool like lavish like hotel you go into, and both the music when you're just in Sniff City as well as when you go into the hotel itself, those are two like really banging tracks. The city, it's got this kind of like Arabian sort of theme. You could imagine somebody like belly dancing to it, and then you go inside, and it's just got this song that's just a bop that's almost kind of like this Latin, like just like going really hard on like the trumpet, like a uh, just a really really good mariachi song going on. I don't know. Um, and then some of the like dungeon areas. This game kind of has dungeons. That's another highlight. I really enjoyed the dungeons. There's like these temples you go to. There's like you have to fight these enemies called the Velamentals, and then your partner girl Olivia can learn their abilities, and yeah, they're a lot like Zelda dungeons. You solve these puzzles as you go through them, and they were really enjoyable. The Ice Elemental dungeon, I didn't like. So, I didn't hate it, but it's got a couple of sliding block puzzles, which are never really. A lot of people kind of rag on those, and yeah, they're not my favorite kind of puzzle either. But yeah, a lot of the puzzles were really fun. Like you had a lot of rooms to explore. The ambience was just really cool in these dungeons. Some of the most visually impressive parts of the game was going into these dungeons. Like I particularly love the aesthetics of the water elemental dungeon, and the music was really really good in that one too. It kind of reminded me of music like you would hear in Thousand Year Door, like you would hear in like the Great Boggly Tree or something like that. That area, it kind of gives me vibes of that, you know. Um, but yeah, so great soundtrack. I really enjoyed the puzzles in those dungeons. That was a fun thing, and that's another thing that this game has a leg up on Mario and Luigi Brothership, because that game had dungeons, but they just felt so generic and boring and devoid of personality. They all felt almost copied and pasted. They felt like Dragon Quest dungeons. And if you've played Dragon Quest, and I enjoy Dragon Quest, but if you've played one Dragon Quest dungeon, you've kind of seen them all. It's just a bunch of rooms. They almost feel a little bit procedurally generated, because it's like you're going through this maze, and it's like you'll come to a dead end. It's like, okay, I guess I got to turn around and go this other way, and there's just a bunch of enemies in there, and there's not really any clever puzzles to solve or anything. You're just working your way through it, and that's kind of how it felt in Brothership. You had some that would have like a couple of stealth missions, but they weren't very fun stealth missions. They got kind of tedious and repetitive as well. So yeah, very bad, poorly designed dungeons I felt in Brothership. They might be a little puzzly where it's like, oh, you've got to have Luigi carry this plug. We got to plug in somewhere, and that'll open a gate to go forward. But it was very shallow stuff. But these were a lot more engaging. Really, the only thing that I would say where Brothership has a leg up on Origami King is, well, I guess also the fact that it does have original characters, but again, I didn't really like those characters very much. I liked the non-original characters in Origami King better. But the big thing is the battle system. The battles were enjoyable in Brothership, but that's it. that's pretty much the only mark that I would give in that game's favor over this one. But yeah, so the Velamental temples were fun, and then you would get to the Velamental boss. We've not talked about boss battles in this game yet. And then other bosses will be the Legion of Stationery, which I talked about. I think have stupid, ridiculous designs where it's just a stapler or it's just a pair of scissors or whatever. But putting my dislike for those bosses' stupid designs aside, the boss fights themselves were actually fun. I was shocked. I thought the bosses would be my least favorite part of the game because, again, I do not like the regular overworld combat at all. But the boss fights were actually pretty enjoyable. Like, it wasn't just like, oh, well, they were tolerable. It was like, no, I had a good time with these. Some could get a little bit frustrating. But for the most part, like, I remember, I think it might have been Andre from Game Explain who talked about how the bosses almost made him want to just, like, quit the game. Because, like, I think there was, like, one boss in particular he said he got stuck on for, like, 2 hours and it drove him crazy. But that wasn't my experience with this game. I thought it probably would have been. Because I don't consider myself great with these types of puzzles. But I really enjoyed it. So it's still it's still got that circular grid where it's like these rings that you rotate and they're divided up into segments. But instead of Mario being in the center and you're having to arrange the opponents in a straight line or whatever, the enemies in the center, and you're Mario and you're on the outer part of the ring, and you have to forge a path by rotating. You only have a limited number of moves. You've got like 3 moves. You can either rotate the ring, and this is how it is for standard battles too. You can either rotate one of the rings, clockwise or counterclockwise, 360 degrees at whatever part, or in like the individual sections, you can move the whole like section like vertically, like across, if that makes sense. It's a little hard to explain, but so that's how it works in the bosses too. But you're having to forge a path for Mario because like there'll be arrows that you have to line up, and Mario will, when you finish your turn, Mario will follow those arrows, and ultimately you're trying to make a path to where Mario can get to the boss, and you have to place you have to make sure Mario lands on like an attack space, and then there's like other spaces that'll like multiply the damage Mario deals by 2, or gives him a second attack on his turn, or hearts that can refill his health. So you have to strategically make sure that you're aligning these tiles in such a way that Mario can follow this path toward the enemy and successfully do whatever he needs to do. And the bosses can be a little bit annoying at first, just because like you don't really know what to do, and you're probably gonna like go to attack the boss, and then maybe he like damages you during your attack or something, and then you find out like it's kind of a lot of trial and error, and you learn like, oh, if you try to jump into him, then he'll chomp you. You have to make sure you approach him from the backside and hit him with the hammer. So that can be a little bit annoying at first, but not too bad. But I really enjoyed it doing these bosses a lot more than I thought I would. I didn't think I would enjoy them at all, but they're actually pretty fun. And yeah, it was. If the regular battles were more like that, I would have liked them a lot better, because it's still the ring thing, but it's just, instead of just lining up enemies, in a straight line or whatever, it just felt a lot more engaging to me. I don't know. It almost felt like a game board for some reason. That's what kind of kept coming to my mind. It's like I feel like this is like a game board, but I don't know what. There's no game board that comes to my mind that I could really compare that to, so I don't know why that comparison came to my mind. But that's just what it made me think of. But it was a lot of fun strategizing and trying to line up the optimal path. And it wasn't that hard. The longest I got stuck on one of those, maybe 30 minutes. But it wasn't like, I didn't spend 2 hours like Andre did. So I'm thankful for that, and not to knock him or whatever, because, I've certainly got stuck on parts of games that other people maybe didn't find very tedious like I did, and vice versa. It happens. But yeah, when he said that, I just kind of took it at face value, because I could totally see me getting stuck on it. And I was like, yeah, I'm probably going to hate these bosses. But playing them for myself, I was like, no, this isn't bad. I like it. So yeah, I enjoyed that. What else do I have here that I want to talk about? Another kind of fun moment the game had, which most Paper Mario games have this, even the newer ones when I think of it. It's kind of a tradition, I guess, because the N64 game had Chuck Quizmo, and Thousand Year Door had, sometimes you'd find like a Thwomp who would give like a little quiz or something. But this game, it has this little, and it's another one of those fun little moments where in Chapter 4, when you're in the Shangri Spa, you play this little game called Shy Guys Finish Last, which is kind of, I guess it's a play on Nice Guys Finish Last, but it's led by a bunch of shy guys, and like saying nice guys finish last is kind of a negative connotation, so it's kind of almost like a self-depreciating joke about shy guys. I don't know why they would have named it that, but anyway. But that's kind of another fun little thing where it's like you got to play these, get through this series of like trivia questions and play these like little games. That was kind of enjoyable. Let's see, anything else that I really want to talk about? Yeah, I think I touched on most of the things I want to talk about. I guess something else, I don't love how self-aware the more modern Paper Mario games are about the world being paper. Because like in the first 3 Paper Mario games, Paper Mario 1000 Year Door, and Super Paper Mario, yeah, you've got this aesthetic where it's like everything's made out of paper, but it's like, I always interpreted that as like you're reading a pop-up book, right? Like it's the pages of the book coming to life, and that's why everyone's made out of paper. So like from their perspective, like if we were seeing the world through Mario's eyes, this isn't paper to him. This is just the world in which he lives. But from the outside looking in as the viewer, we see it through the pages of this pop-up book, if that makes sense. But with the modern Paper Mario games, they make it so self-aware of just like acknowledging the fact that like that they're paper, and it's really weird, and it kind of takes away from the immersion. It wasn't as egregious in this game as I thought it would be, but it was still there a decent amount, and I'd always kind of internally groan or roll my eyes a little bit, where it's like, a toad might say something like, "Boy, I sure got, I don't want to get creased or torn, or like, man, I'd better stay out of the water or I'll get soggy because I'm paper," because it ruins the immersion. And like Thousand Year Door, that game's got great humor. And one of my favorite jokes in that game, it breaks the fourth wall. So I'm not against breaking the fourth wall. Like there's this moment where this one character is like, he's about to deep dive into a bunch of important lore. And he's like, "Hey, you in front of the TV, you need to listen up. What I'm about to say is very important." And then, Mario's partner, whoever you have in his party, is like, "Who's he talking to? Guy in front of the TV? Is this guy gone crazy or what?" But it's funny and it works. And the reason that it works and the reason it's so funny is because it's so out of left field. Because up to this point, the game's never broke the fourth wall. So it, my voice cracked, broke the fourth wall. So it really subverts your expectations when that happens. But in the modern Paper Mario games, it's so constant, and it's just not. It takes away from being able to immerse yourself in this world, because it's like you've constructed this world that it's like you want to fully lock into and immerse yourself into. But it's like if you were watching, I don't know, like a claymated cartoon or like a stop motion animation, like what is it? The Nightmare Before Christmas, right? With like Jack Skellington, and it's like if you took that movie, but then like interspersed like every 10 minutes, Jack referenced the fact that he's made out of like clay or whatever type of material he's made out of. Like it would just kind of ruin the movie. It's like what? Why is he's not supposed to know that he's not real? But why does he keep communicating that to the audience? Again, if you do it like once or twice, it can be funny because it just catches you so off guard. But if you just keep doing it, then it just kind of diminishes this world and this story that you're trying to build up. So I don't love that. But on the whole, I thought this game was pretty solid. As an RPG, it's not good. Because the turn-based mechanics I don't really enjoy. But if you just look at it from the lens of being an exploration game, if you ignore as much of the RPG mechanics as you can, it's a pretty solid game here that I would honestly give probably an 8 out of 10, which is not what I would have expected. I knew that it would reach a certain bar of quality because Nintendo has very high standards when it comes to polish and things like that, with the exception of maybe like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. But besides that game, you're not going to play a Nintendo game and just randomly clip through the floor. There's going to be, it's going to be polished well enough, and the gameplay will be solid enough that it's like, well, it's playable. It functions as a video game. But I did expect it to be a little bit mediocre, or at the very least a very average game. And this game's not average. Going into it, I would have expected that I would have given this game a 7 out of 10 at most, but I think that's underselling it. So I genuinely think Paper Mario the Origami King is a good game. Is it a good Paper Mario game? Not necessarily. Do I want to see more Paper Mario games like this in the future? No. With that said, if Nintendo wanted to branch off and make it like 2 separate franchises or something, where... So in Japan, the first Paper Mario game was actually called Mario Story. But then as the Paper Mario games went on, they kind of took away a lot of the story elements and kind of put the paper first and foremost. But if they wanted to make 2 franchises and have one that was called Mario Story, that was more like classic Paper Mario, like Thousand Year Door and those early games, and it's like you've got your story and all these original characters, But the fact that everything's paper takes a back seat. That's just kind of an aesthetic thing. And then also have a series that's Paper Mario, or just like some original new IP that really plays with, like, you know, the paper mechanics and is more self-aware and maybe doesn't try as hard to be story heavy. I would be okay with that, and I would, I would probably buy those games too. But I won't be devastated if they never make another Paper Mario game that's like Origami King or that's like Color Splash. But having played Origami King now, and especially in a world where Nintendo has gone back to making the Paper Mario games that I really want to see, I can appreciate it for what it is. I would not recommend Origami King if it's your first Paper Mario game. I would strongly consider starting with either Thousand Year Door or the original Paper Mario, which, if you're subscribed to the NSO expansion pass for $50 a year, you got free access to it anyway, so you might as well play it. Just hilarious games, just such good story, such good characters. Thousand Year Door really dials it up to another level. You don't have quite the same depth in the original. You don't have to play the original before Thousand Year Door, but it is kind of helpful because there are some little references and some fun callbacks that you'll miss out on. But it's not like a direct continuation where it's like you'll just be completely lost, in terms of the plot, because it is its own standalone story, but within the same universe. But just such good games. Because Origami King, I don't necessarily think that it's for everyone. There's a lot of things about this game, like the battle mechanics, that, like, if you like them, then, hats off to you. They weren't for me. They didn't resonate with me. And I could see that being a big turnoff for people because, if you're going to get a game that bills itself as a turn-based RPG, then you expect the RPG turn-based battle mechanics to actually be good and enjoyable and, to an extent, traditional. So I can't guarantee that if you play this game, you'll come out of it loving it. I don't even know if I would say that I love it. I enjoyed it. I like it. I like it a decent amount. I don't think I would say that I love it, though. And I don't want anyone to be turned off from the Paper Mario franchise by playing this as your first one. But Thousand Year Door is so accessible now. It's so easy to get your hands on it because they just remade it for Switch. It looks great. There are some changes I'm not super happy with, but it does fix certain other issues with the game. But overall, it's still a phenomenal game. So much of what I love about it is still retained. So I think either start there or start with the original. But play that original trilogy first if you can. The third one might be a little bit harder to get a hold of. Like, if you don't still have a Wii, I guess you could, like, emulate it or whatever. Super Paper Mario. And that one, again, was pretty divisive. So I can't guarantee that you would love that one. But yeah, I think once you at least play one of the first two first, and then where you go from there is up to you. But don't play this game first, because I could see that turning you off from the rest of the Paper Mario franchise if you don't end up liking it. But after you've played Thousand Year Door, then I would say give it a try. If you're somebody like me who just had this personal vendetta against Origami King, because Nintendo just wasn't making the Paper Mario games that you wanted, and were taking sort of almost a political activist stand of, like, boycotting, and I'm not going to support these modern Paper Mario games. Now that Nintendo has given us Thousand Year Door, if you still don't want to buy a new copy, that goes into Nintendo's pockets because you don't want this game to outsell Thousand Year Door or whatever, then, do like I did and buy a secondhand copy. But I think it's worth playing, or at least watch a playthrough of it on YouTube, see how you feel about it. It's a good game. It's not bad, and now that I've beaten it, I really do want to go and play Color Splash, which I feel like I'll enjoy even more than this game. I still don't think it'll be on par with Thousand Year Door or any of the first three Paper Mario games, but I think it'll still be a good game. So yeah. I think the only other thing I didn't mention Excuse me. Mario has this move called like the 1,000 fold arms, which looks a little ridiculous. It looks kind of stupid if I'm being honest. Mario folds up his arms and he's got like these just giant extendable arms. So I don't know. It looks kind of weird, and I don't really like it because I've missed when Paper Mario took itself a little bit more seriously and wasn't that goofy. I mean, it had its goofy moments, but that's just kind of like I don't know. The way Mario looks with those elongated arms, I just think is kind of cringe a little bit. But from a gameplay perspective, you can kind of grab hold of stuff in the environment and like rip it apart. Kind of like is it perforations? Is that what they call them? Like you can grab a perforated piece of cardboard, almost like a Labo or something, right? And you can like kind of like tear it apart where it's got like the holes or lines poked into it where it's easily rippable, and then you can kind of like unwrap stuff and unfold stuff. And to an extent, it's a little bit satisfying. You know, you kind of got that HD rumble, so you can kind of feel the as you're like tearing the cardboard. But it's kind of a shallow mechanic. I figured I'd bring it up, but you know, it's fine. It's inoffensive for the most part. I think it looks kind of ridiculous, but it's kind of satisfying to do. But it's not like any brain teasery puzzles. It's kind of just self-explanatory. You see something where it's like a thing that looks like it can be ripped or torn. You can only use this move if you stand on this particular circle. Um, so I don't know if it's as interesting of a way to interact with the environment, like and to have puzzles as. Again, I didn't play Color Splash, but I think that game had a mechanic where it was like you could kind of like cut stuff out with scissors, maybe, and it would kind of almost make it like Super Paper Mario, where then Mario would go like 2D, and then he could kind of like climb on like the mountains or whatever in the background to get to a new area. That seemed kind of cooler, to be honest, and even really Sticker Star, had a thing where like you could place these stickers into the environment. Where Mario could like drop down and kind of like put the sticker down, and then that would cause it to come to life, and you could interact with it in some way, like putting down a fan sticker in this desert sandstorm and blow all the sand away to clear stuff out. I thought that was kind of neat, even if the rest of the game wasn't that great. So the 1,000 fold arms technique is kind of whatever, but I don't hate it, but I don't really love it either. It's just kind of there, you know. But I figured I'd bring it up because we talked about virtually everything else in this game. But yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I want to talk about. I think that's pretty much it. Um, but yeah, a fair number, not everything, but a handful of stuff I complain about. I do think Color Splash probably rectifies, which is kind of ironic because this game came out after, so you could kind of say it was a step backwards a little bit. But yeah, I'm looking forward to playing that game when I get the chance because it's got more. I feel like it does more with the characters in the Mario universe, which is also kind of what uh, people kind of crap on that game. But for the limitations, I think Mario and Luigi Paper Jam does a lot more with those limitations than Origami King, where it's like you had a lot more. Like a lot of the bosses, you'd have like King Boo and King Bob and Petey Piranha Plant, and I think that game also had the Koopalings and a lot of these other characters that it's like show up a decent amount, but not like in every Mario game, and it's kind of just cool just to have them there and see whatever their dialogue is. So I wish Origami King had more of that instead of again like, oh, here's a talking stapler and here's a talking tape dispenser. So I'm looking forward to that with Origami King, or I mean, sorry, with Color Splash. I'm looking forward to, from what I remember of watching somebody play through that game. Um, Even though the game, it's not really like a one connected overworld like Origami King is, and it's kind of like divided into levels like that you select on a map, just like Sticker Star, and even Super Mario RPG was way before that. It seems like there's like a whole bunch of levels. And so just a lot of variety from what I remember, like more so. This game's got some, Origami King's got some creative worlds and areas that you explore, but not nearly as much variety as what I remember seeing of Color Splash. I know there's like this one area where it's like you go into like a VR game or something, and it's like you're in like Mario 3, and it does the Super Paper Mario thing where you can go 2D to 3D. That looks awesome. I really want to play that for myself. And I think there's like a forest or something where it's kind of like that one world in Mario 3 where it's like everything can be like really small or like really huge. Um, so, uh, so yeah, and then also, even though it's got like the disposable inventory and you don't get, you don't level up or anything from doing the battles, like getting experience. It is more traditional turn based and not the stupid ring thing, so I think I like that better. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'll like Color Splash more. Maybe once I have a chance to play it, maybe I'll do another podcast talking about what I thought of Color Splash. But don't expect it anytime soon though, because we're literally like weeks away from the release of the Switch 2 at the time of recording this. So although I would really like to, now that I've beaten Origami King, just jump straight into Color Splash. I just don't think now's a good time to. So I'll get to it when I get to it, I guess. But yeah, thank you all for joining me on this podcast where I talked the 2-hour podcast that was supposed to be all about Paper Mario: The Origami King. I probably spent about an hour talking about Origami King and about an hour talking about other Paper Mario games, Teen Titans Go, a lot of stuff that wasn't Origami King. I'm sorry, I kind of ramble a little bit. I don't want to be one of those YouTubers that's like, it takes them for like they beat around the bush and it takes them like 10 minutes into the video before they get to the point. But I guess podcasts are a little different. It's a little bit more informal. So I guess it's okay to be a little bit more laid back and not necessarily as well structured in terms of like where you go. Because I think we got there in the end. We touched on everything I wanted to get to. Because for a podcast, you kind of strap in expecting that it's going to be, you're getting into something lengthy. So like, it's okay. It's not like, somebody puts out a news article, right? It's like, with the clickbait title of like Nintendo just announced crazy new must-have feature for Switch 2. And then the first 5 minutes, it's like, hey guys, it's so-and-so. As we all know, the Switch 2 is coming out in June the 5th or what? Is that the date it comes out? June 5th? And, spends like all this time and then like, only in like the last 30 seconds of the video do they finally get to the point. But, I don't know. Hopefully it's a little bit more acceptable in podcast format to kind of jump all over the place. But let me know if you enjoy this podcast, if how you like the structure of it, if I need to be a little bit more structured, I guess, and cut to the chase a little bit more quickly if I'm too wordy and all over the place and need to be more concise with my words, which isn't easy for me, but I'll try. Let me know in the comments, but thank you so very much if you listen to this entire spiel. And also let me know in the comments what you think of Origami King. If you've played it, has my video made you want to go back and give it a chance now? Are you are you like me and you haven't bought the game up to this point because you were mad about Nintendo not making the classic Paper Mario games anymore? Or were you one of those people from the get-go that was like, no, I'm going to get this game day one, and you've loved it this entire time? Let me know. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And with all that said, guys, I will catch y'all next time. Bye-bye.